did a test run of this yesterday, so this should be a reasonable volume for my microphone to be set at. I recorded part of this yesterday. Fuck, you guys are still crooked. And then I realized that I muted my microphone halfway through on accident. So we're just doing a little do-over. It's fine. Okay, hello. Hello and welcome. If you are returning from previous book reviews, you know me. I'm Ken. If you don't know me, I'm Ken. And I use this channel to do whatever the fuck I want. And part of that has been horror book reviews. So, you might be sitting there going, Ken, where have you been? The last time you uploaded a video was like a 10-minute video about Deltarune, and then you vanished. And I'm gonna say, yeah, university burnout hit really fucking hard this year. But I'm back. I'm back. And today we're gonna talk about The Monstrumologist by Rick Yancey. This is a young adult horror novel. On the back it says that it is for ages 14 and up. When I first started reading this book, I was told that the target demo was 12 and up, and I thought that was a little intense for 12 and up, but it's 14 and up, and I think that's more than reasonable. A friend recommended it to me. It's from 2007, and I didn't like it. And for a while, I knew that I didn't like it, but I couldn't figure out why. So a fun little thing that we get to do for this video is I ended up live streaming like the last half of this book. Not that anyone came to watch, which is fine. I had people come in sometimes. It was nice. It was lovely. We had a good time. We sat there and we talked for hours about how fucking crazy this book is. But it wasn't just me reading this book out loud. It was me live reacting to the book. Because I couldn't figure out what it was that wasn't clicking with me. And I just wanted to have evidence of how I was feeling about the book while I read it. I live streamed half of this book. But the first 3 streams that I did, this is a new microphone. And while it sounds really nice on my phone, when I was streaming to Twitch, it compressed the audio really weird. So every single early video sounds like this the whole time. And I don't really know why, but we got that figured out eventually. So some of those videos are just never ever going to see the light of day. But the good news is that we have a lot of things to talk about in this book. So usually when I do a book review, we do like a spoiler-free review and then like a spoiler-filled review. That is not what we are doing today. I will give you a little itty-bitty plot summary, and then we're going deep into analysis. We are going to analyze these fucking characters that make me want to absolutely die. And also the weird shit that happens that there's a lot of things that made me very upset in this book. And not in like a, it's scary and I'm sad about that kind of way. In like a, oh no, we shouldn't be writing things like this kind of way. So I'll give you like a quick little plot summary. There's a guy, he's a monstrumologist, he studies monsters. Monsters are real. They find out that there's a monster that's been or like a type of monster that's been eating corpses in the cemetery. And he has to take his like young ward. It's literally like a Batman Robin situation to like go figure out how to do this and like kill them all, because the monsters that are here, they're called anthropophagi, and they are native to Africa, so they shouldn't be in America. It also takes place in 1888, which isn't great. I guess we should talk about things that I did like about the book before we move into things that I don't like. Some of the gore scenes were crazy. There were a couple of sentences that made me sit there and go, whoa, that's a good sentence. For instance, there's a part where Will Henry, who is the boy, is talking about how his parents died and how he ran away from the house burning down. And that chapter ends with with the 2 sentences, I escaped, I am bound, I ran, I remain. And that's fucking metal as hell. That's sick. There's also a part where a child is described as being so fucked up. It was as if the child had been shoved into a grinder and then spewed out in every direction. That's crazy. Alright, that's good. Do I like anything else? Some of the chapters weren't as bad as some of the other chapters, but most of them sucked ass. Okay. So the anthropophagi are creatures that have been written before in various pieces of literature. And the beginning of the book opens with a bunch of quotes about them. So, how like old Slenderman web series used to like put in stories about the Ubermensch in a way to like explain the existence of Slenderman, or like old um like folk tales from different countries. That's the vibe it gave, which was super cool. And I do like that. Like the monsters themselves are cool. I am going to insert the part where I talk about how I picture them in my brain, um, based on their description. Use your artistic talents to create your vision of an anthropophagi based upon the author's descriptions of the monster. I'm not gonna do that, but I will tell you that when I think about it, you know that like red monster from like Looney Tunes? I think like him but shaved, and then but like mixed with like the uh real monsters guy with like the eyeballs in his hands. So the fun thing about this book is that because it's written for young teens, there is a discussion topics section at the end of the book for teachers to talk to their students about the book, and I did read all of them. And we'll just throw the ones that I don't use in the video at the end, because I think it would be like a nice little outro, because it was a nice little outro for me to sit there and think about the book. Okay, so we're gonna talk about things in the order of what I think to be the least problematic, and then we're gonna build up to the most problematic. So, least problematic, we're gonna talk about how bad the pacing is in this book. It took me so long to read this book because I could not for the life of me convince myself to take the time to sit down and read, because the chapters are huge and boring. And when something cool does happen, it takes too long. I also don't know what the time span of the book is. I know there's like a little like jump in months towards the end, but for like the main part of the story, I genuinely have no idea how long it takes. I think it's like around a month, but it's really fucking jumbled up, so I have no idea. I also think that maybe I'm just not built for young adult anymore, and I think that might be part of the problem. But I also felt like part of the book was really belittling and degrading towards the readers, but I will talk about that when we talk about characters. The two longest chapters in this book are both 60 pages long. Like, I don't have the time to sit down and read a chapter that long, you know? And they could easily have been broken up. But I don't want to break up the chapter myself. That's not my job. That's the writer's job. I'm the reader. I'm going to read it the way that you wrote it for me. And it was written bad. I didn't like it. Okay? I live streamed the second 60-page long chapter, and it literally took 3 hours. Now, did I get up every once in a while to go do other stuff? Yeah, for like 2 minutes. That's too long. I don't want to read for that long. I like a short, quick chapter, and maybe that's like a personal preference, but I think also that like if there's interesting things happening in the chapter, it's more, you don't notice how much time is passing. Cuz like I've read House of Leaves. House of Leaves has some crazy big chapters. And I would go from the chapter to the appendix and then read the whole appendix part. Like sometimes I sat there and read for 5 hours straight, but I didn't feel like I was wasting my time. This book made me feel like I was wasting my time. I felt like I was taking forever, and like nothing was happening. And when things did happen, they happened too slow, or we just kept talking about them for too long. Part of what makes a horror story tense, or really any story tense and like drive your want to keep reading, is the outcomes of the characters. You don't know what's going to happen to them. Now, going into this, I knew it was a series. So I was like, okay, so like the main characters probably aren't going to die. And I was correct. The only character who dies is all of the randos, all of the fucking jobbers that get jobbed out by the Anthropophagi, and Malachi, who honestly, he deserved it. Not that he deserved to die, but he deserved that like heroes out, you know? He like in a way he sacrifices himself killing the things that killed his family. Like he gets the revenge that he wanted. And I love that for him. But not only do I know Will Henry lives and Worthrop lives and probably Kearns lives because there are multiple books. There are 3 of them. I know Will Henry's not going to die by the end of it because he lives to be 157, which are because of the worms. This is going to be before I sing Worms in Your Brain, but like, I sing it later, don't worry. But not only that, we are told before the climax that Malachi Stinnett is going to die later that night. Old Will Henry spoils so much of the story. He's like, I wonder if Malachi knew he was going to die later that night. Chapters before Malachi dies. Paragraphs before he kills the pussed out Anthropophagi, he goes, moments later I would be puking over its corpse. So I had 0 tension. There was nothing keeping me going because the motherfucker spoiled his own fucking story. Why would I want to keep reading if I know what happens? Okay? I'm not one of those ADHD bitches that you gotta like tell them what the outcome is before you start telling the story. I am the opposite. I live for the suspense. I live for the drama, the tension, the surprise. You fucking took that from me and I hate it. Okay, so most of the characters in this book are white men, which isn't a bad thing, but it's literally every character that we get to know is a white man. Every single one of them. There is no female influence. I think in the second one a woman comes along, but like there's no important women in anyone's life. But if we're going to talk about characters, we have to talk about them in a very specific way. I'm just going to start really loosely by kind of explaining who everyone is. So the main characters that I've decided to focus on, the ones that I think are the most important, are Pellinor Worthrop, Will Henry, Jack Kearns, Malachi Stinnett, and Robert Morgan. So Pellinor Worthrop is the Monstrumologist, and he's traumatized because his daddy didn't love him when he was little, and so now he's kind of a dick. It gives the way that Professor Snape was like, I'm gonna abuse this child, but it's because I loved his mom kind of vibes, you know? Like, he's like, I'm just being a dickhead to protect you, and it's like, still abuse, my guy. It's still abuse. He does ease up a little bit towards the end, but it doesn't. The first big change feels very unnatural. So his whole thing for half the book was, I'm a scientist. I don't have feelings. I don't let feelings get in the way of my science. And then he meets Varner, so Varner used to be friends with Worthrop's dad, Alistair. They meet him in an insane asylum type vibe, and he is morbidly obese, cannot move, and is being slowly eaten to death by flies and maggots. Worthrop, like, flips his shit at the guy running it, which, like, is valid. Like, do threaten that man. He definitely deserves to be threatened. But he has shown 0 human compassion for anyone up to this point. So for him to all of a sudden flip out that someone else isn't showing compassion for humans is weird and incredibly jarring. And it doesn't feel like character growth. It feels like inconsistent writing. Will Henry is the boy. He's our main character. We are reading the book that is written by him like 150 years later when he's like an old ass man. And he's like, I need to tell people my secrets. Which like, Why? Just don't do it. You just don't have to. You can just not do that. So the concept is that, like, is this man lying or telling the truth? How can he be that old? Which we find out is because he has worms in his blood. See those long, oblong black specks? He asked. Yes, sir, I think so. Yes, you do, or yes, you think you do. Be precise, Will Henry. I see them, yes, sir. Those are the larvae. I swallowed. The shapes resembled tiny obsidian orbs. Thousands of dead little black eyes swimming in a single drop of my blood. The doctor removed his gloves and said matter-of-factly, well, it appears the population has remained more or less stable. He flipped open the file beside the microscope, marked Subject W.J. Henry, Diagram B, a Rawakis infestation, and scribbled a sloppy note under the date. Is that a good thing? I asked. Yes, it is a good thing. No one knows why, in some cases, Arawakis maintains perfect symbiosis with its mammalian host, giving the host a naturally long life, and in other cases overwhelms the body with the sheer volume of its numbers. Singularly curious is your case, Will Henry, for it falls in the former category, whereas clearly your father's did not. There is a theory much too complex for me to explain adequately in all its elegant detail, from an excellent paper written by one of my old colleagues at the Society, which, briefly put, postulates what happened to your father was a means of propagation, a way for the parasite to find a new host. Which is cool. I'm not gonna lie. Worms in the blood? Sick. I'm down for that. His dad's name is James, used to be Worthrop's old assistant, and then James got worms in the blood and they killed him, and he ended up setting the house on fire because he set himself on fire, and then him and his wife died in the fire, and Will Henry ran to Worthrop's place and is like, you have to take care of me now, and so now he's taking care of him. So he's like the junior assistant apprentice monstrumologist. Jack Kearns is a fucking madman. He's like, instead of like studying monsters, he's like a monster hunter. Like, he's going out and killing them. He's incredibly eccentric. He's got like eccentric weirdo character trope, and he comes around. They like write him a letter towards the beginning of the book, but then he shows up like over the halfway point. So he gets zero development because he literally shows up halfway. But I don't think he gets developed later on in the series at all. It sounds like he just remains the same crazy belligerent asshole that he's always been. Robert Morgan's a cop. Need I say more? And Malachi Stinnett is the brother of the kid who was sprayed out so much that it looked like he was in a grinder and got like fucking flung around. His entire family got eaten by the monsters. And he's sick. I love Malachi. He's like, he shows up and he's the straight man, and I'm like, thank God someone here is sane. I love this for me. Like, everyone is just fucking crazy, and then Malachi comes in and is like, yo, all these motherfuckers be crazy, and I'm like, yes, thank you. I know. But he's literally so cool. So I have put together, to discuss these characters, a lovely little whiteboard with two scales that are ratings that I have given to these various characters. One is the asshole scale, and the other one is the competent scale. So this is the asshole scale. At the top of this list, we have Jack Kearns. He is an asshole. He is the most asshole man I have ever seen. He's literally like if you took the Cheshire Cat and made him a murderer and a human. Okay? I don't fuck with that. He literally makes up the dumbest riddles of all time just to ask people things. It is cool that his like character's morality is that there is no morality except for what is important in the moment, and I do find that very interesting because he's taking a very like animalistic approach to the way that things should be. So then we have 3 blank spots because nobody can even come close to how bad Jack is. Okay? Then we have Pellinor. Okay? He is a sad boy with daddy issues. That doesn't excuse the fact that he's literally an asshole. Alright, then we have old Will Henry. Old Will Henry, the old man that we are reading the words of, not a good person. Also, really wants us to know that he didn't want to fuck Warthrop. But we can see right through it. Play the clip of old Will Henry saying the gayest shit alive. With like the gods to whom the temples were built remains hidden. We understand our own construct. We know our own theory. We love our own fabrication. Still, does the artifice of our affection make our love any less real? Not that I ever loved the Monstrumologist. I do not say that. William James Henry. You are actively lying to yourself. I have fealty to neither the man nor his memory, though of the first I have been bereft these many years, and by the second I am admittedly consumed. That is love. What you just described was love. I'm not gay though. Fuck you, Will Henry. Your dad was gay and you might also be. But also, you can love a man platonically. It's fine. Women do it all the time. This fucking guy, dude. This fucking dude guy, we're gonna wallop him. We're gonna find Will Henry because what's this motherfucker's name? Rick Yancey is like, this is a real story. If it's real, which it's not, but if it was, I would find Will Henry, I would find his corpse, and I'd beat the shit out of him. This stupid bitch. Not a day passes when I do not think of him and our many adventures together, but that is not evidence of love. Not a night goes by without my seeing his lean, handsome face in my mind's eye, or hearing the distant echo of his voice and the acoustical perfection of my memory. But that proves nothing. I did not then, nor do I now, nor ever. I will say it again. I do not think I protest too much. I never loved the Monstrumologist. That is the worst paragraph I have ever read. I hate this man. Also, while we're at it, can we add in the parts where they talk about Pellinor being queer? Not in like, I know they don't mean it in the gay way, but please. We'll just throw that in. And then also where Will Henry's dad is gay. Thank you. I am asking myself for the future, remember to put those in here, because I think that would be really funny. Alright, Robert Morgan, the cop, stupid. He's an idiot, okay? But that doesn't excuse him for being an asshole. He literally shows up and goes, yo, Warthrop's gonna go to prison because he let these people die. They were eaten by monsters, dude. Okay? He didn't think that they were going to be eaten. He thought that they were gonna, like, because they just fed, that they were gonna sleep for a while. Okay? Not really his fault. The science was faulty. He is a bad scientist, though. So, like, props to be mad at him. Like, that's fine. Don't put him in jail. That's stupid. And we have young Will Henry, who is, he's not like a dickhead, but, like, you can feel the way that he's going to grow up, and it's not good. And he doesn't, like, confront things. Like, he's hearing people say awful things, and he does nothing to, like, counteract that and be like, well, actually, I think that this is a good thing. And no. No. We're gonna talk more about why old Will Henry is bad later in a very specific section. Don't worry about it. And then we have three more blank spots. And then we have Malachi, because there's no character can come close to how good Malachi Stinnett is. He is out here. He is trying his damnedest. He's worried about people. He had a bunch of his siblings die. He might have had two sisters named Elizabeth, because when asked what his siblings were named, he names Elizabeth twice. So that's unclear. And I would show you the clip of me realizing this, but it's one of the shitty it's one of these clips, and I can't in good consciousness, I can't in good consciousness give you that. We're just gonna pretend that when I read that didn't actually happen. Okay? That's the asshole scale. Now over here, we have the competent scale. How competent are the characters? Malachi Stinnett, number 1. He's incredibly competent. He realizes that he is getting eaten and he is going to die in the most meta way possible, by the way. And he goes, give me a fucking grenade so I can blast this bitch. He also kills so many monsters. Okay, the boy, he's out here thinking. Okay, he's thinking, he's planning, he's strategizing. Editing Kennedy, insert the clip of you reading about Malachi being cool. And I lunged forward and reached for him. Grab hold, Malachi, grab hold! He slapped my hand away and gestured violently toward the bag that lay beside me. He sank to his chest in the roiling surface, borne down by the same beast that had punched her fist through the chest of the navigator Burns aboard the Feronia, and blood gushed from his gaping mouth. She had rammed her claws into the small of his back and wrapped them around his spinal column, using it as a kind of handle to pull him down. That's fucking crazy. I had misread Malachi's true desire, which had nothing to do with rescue. Unlike Erasmus and my father, Malachi did not want deliverance. He had never wanted that. It was too late for that. Again, he frantically jabbed his finger at the bag. I picked it up and flung it into his arms, and in mute dismay watched him pull out a grenade, clutched it to his chest, and hooked his finger through the pin. And then, with blood-stained teeth, Malachi Stinnett smiled triumphantly at me. I fucking love Malachi. He closed his eyes, his head fell back. His expression was one of complete peace and acceptance. He disappeared by degrees, first his arms and chest, and then his neck, until for the last time his eyes came open, staring into mine, unblinking and unconcerned. For Elizabeth, he whispered. He vanished into the bloody froth. I threw myself backward, scrambling away from the spot as fast as I could. The earth heaved, the walls rocked, huge chunks of ceiling shook loose and came crashing down. The concussion of the subsequent blast sent me flying. My fall was broken by, of all things, the body of the juvenile that Malachi's bullet had brought down. Also, the clip where he offers to run away with Will to show that he's a nice boy. Could run away. The two of us. We could enlist in the army together. This is the first awful thing that Malachi has said. I'm too young, I pointed out. Please, Malachi, the doctor will be... Or we could sign on to a whaler, or go west. Wouldn't that be grand? We could be cowboys, Will Henry, and ride the open range, or become Indian fighters, or outlaws like Jesse James. Wouldn't you like to be an outlaw, Will? My place is here, I answered, with the doctor. But if he were gone, then I would go with him. No, I mean if he should not survive this day. Crazy thing to say out loud. I was startled by the notion. It had never occurred to me that Warthrop might die. Considering I was an orphan whose naive faith in the ever-presence of his parents had been shattered, one might think the possibility would have been the foremost in my mind, but I had not contemplated it until that moment. The thought made me shiver. What if the doctor should die? Freedom, yes, but from what Kearns called this dark and dirty business. But freedom to do what? Freedom to go where? To an orphanage, most likely, or a foster home. Which would be worse, tutelage under a man such as the Monstrumologist, or the miserable, lonely life of the orphan, unwanted and bereft? Continuing to say unhinged shit. You got this. Okay, then second we have Jack Kearns, but only when he's fighting. He's kind of an idiot. But he does know how to plan for a fight. Okay? He gets together the Maori principle, and he kills a bunch of fucking anthropophagi with the help of some dudes from the town. And that's great. Okay, we love a man who can strategize. We do not love him for any of the other things that he does. And then we have a blank, and then we have Will Henry. Will Henry, pretty fine. does need to learn to close his mouth. Insert the clip of why Will Henry needs to close his mouth. Stunned by the impact, my grip loosened on his wrist for an instant, and that instant was all the monster needed. He pulled my forearm into his powerful jaws and bit down. The pain was explosive, and I howled in anguish, punching him blindly with my free hand, until, in my desperation, I caught hold of his wounded appendage, yanked it to my mouth, and bit down as hard as I could upon the festering wound. Fucking speaking of barf. I don't. Thick, viscous pus filled my mouth and poured down my throat. My stomach heaved in protest. In another moment, I would vomit copiously over his corpse. But my desperate ploy succeeded. His jaws released my arm and he fell away from me, roaring in anguish. Stop! Will Henry! Just punch them in the eye! That's how you got the last one! Fuck, dude. I can't believe that's the only reason why he told us there was pus in the wound, is because he's like, well, it's gonna get in his mouth. Gross! Rick Yancey, don't do that to a 12-year-old boy, that's fucked up. I'm making just a series of question marks for this sticky note, because what the fuck? Ignoring my own searing pain, I felt around the floor, my hands, invisible in the pitch black, though only a foot from my eyes, falling upon a melon-sized stone. Ugh. Sorry, I keep thinking about getting someone else's pus in my mouth and I can't do it. I snatched it up, raised it high over my head, and brought it crashing down upon his writhing body. Again and again and again, against soft flesh and hard enamel, against anything that moved, my sobs and screams gradually overcoming his. Blood and stringy bits of tissue flew in all directions, landing in my eyes and my open mouth, soaking my shirt. Stop getting things in your mouth! William James Henry, close your mouth. Close it. Close your mouth. It is not that hard. Also, can we talk about how after reading that, I sat there and went, is this a fetish? Why are we talking about this for so long? We talk about the pus in his mouth forever. We don't need to keep talking about it. Unnecessary, really. At the end of the day, not needed. Not necessary. And then we have another blank, and then we have Pellinor. He is an okay scientist. He's really good at, early on there's a necropsy that he does, and it's very interesting. But his incompetence does get people killed. Multiple times. So, can't be that competent. And then we have a blank, and then we have Jack Kearns when he's thinking. I don't need to say more. Okay? He's bad socially. He's bad with thoughts. He's good at only fighting. Okay? Anytime he's not fighting, useless. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blanks, and then we have Robert Morgan. We are going to talk about the part of the book that I felt was degrading to its readers right now, because part of that is Robert Morgan being the dumbest man alive. Right before the climax, they realize where all of the monsters are hiding, and it's probably underneath the Warthrop, family mausoleum, because Warthrop's dad is the one that brought them to America because he wanted people to fuck them and then make, like, an Ubermensch, which is genuinely unhinged, but good for him, I guess. Part of this is also why Jack Kearns is an idiot. They notice a family crest, and Jack Kearns goes over and flips it. And I'm going to give you the clip of him flipping it. I wonder. He handed the knife back to me and grasped the silver W. turned it counterclockwise in his hand until it stopped upside down, and Kearns gave a soft, delighted laugh. Now it's an M! Alistair Warthrop, you clever devil. W to M. And M for... Now what in the world could M stand for? Well, I know that W stands for Wumbo. So... We're literally out here doing SpongeBob bits. I love that for us. Wouldn't M be for monsters? Warthrop and his dad were both monstrumologists. Wouldn't the M be for monsters? So, after that, he gives a tricksy little riddle to Robert Morgan. Just play that clip too. The whole thing. On one side swung outward, revealing a small recessed chamber. Mounted in the back was a clock face, its hands frozen at 12 o'clock. Curiouser and curiouser, Kearns breathed as we crowded behind him to peek over his shoulder. Of all places to put a clock! What did the dead care of the time? What do they care? Echoed Morgan in a hoarse whisper. Kearns reached into the nook and pushed against the minute hand. He brought his ear close, moving the metal arm slowly to mark a quarter past. He grunted and leaned back to smile at Morgan. They don't, Constable. It's a letter shy of being a clock. It's a cock. It's only a letter shy, guys. It's only a letter shy. It's a cock. Not a clock. A cock. They probably mean a lock. They probably mean lock, but I'm gonna say cock, because I think that's funny. And also, it's obviously a lock. But it's not obviously a cock, and that's where they get you. That's where they get you. He rotated the large hand back to 12, pressed his hands against the marble, spread his legs for balance, and pushed with all his might against the stone. That's a wide stance, my guy. Ain't nobody pushing you over. Nobody be pushing him over. That's a wide-ass stance. This is ridiculous, cried Warthrop. He had reached the end of even his considerable endurance. Beside him, Morgan's mouth moved as he spelled out the word clock, trying to puzzle out Kearns' enigmatic answer. This man sitting there going, what does he mean? Is it lock or is it cock? What? Clock? Click? This man... Cops are dumb. Cops? I can't do this. What the fuck? The one thing this book has going for it is that it's definitely not copaganda, because the cop's too stupid.
We are wasting precious. It would be a number that has some significance to him, Kearns interrupted. Not an actual time of day, a date, or perhaps a verse from the Bible, a psalm, or something from the Gospels. He snapped his fingers impatiently. Quickly, famous passages. Psalm 23, Malachi offered. Not enough hours, Morgan argued. Might be military time, Kearns mused. He set the clock to 8:23. This time, both he and Malachi, who seemed infected with Kearns' excitement, pushed against the stone, but the huge slab did not budge. John 3:16, Malachi guessed next. Still nothing. Warthrop snorted with disgust. Eleanor, called Kearns. What year was your father born? The doctor waved him away. Kearns turned back to the clock face, fingers restlessly caressing his mustache. Ew. Or perhaps the year Eleanor was born.
Or his wife. Or his anniversary, or any number of combinations for your clock without a C, huffed the constable, having decoded Kearns' cryptic phrase at last. It's hopeless. Sir, no, you don't understand. He means cock.
Behind us, Warthrop said, the witching hour. I noted the sad expression in his eyes, an acknowledgement of the unacceptable, the recognition of a conclusion unavoidable. The witching hour approaches, he continued, from my father's diary. The witching hour approaches, the hour comes, and Christ himself is mocked. Midnight, said Kearns, but we tried that. The witching hour is one past, said Morgan. 1 o'clock. No, it's not. Witching hour is 3 a.m. 3 a.m. That's when the witches come out, because that's when we mock Christ. I have the alarm set at 3 a.m. so that I can wake up and do a little evil cackle, and then say, fuck Jesus. Am I right, guys? Idiots. These guys don't even know their own lore.
I'm never going to get over that. Now, this is a book for teenagers, okay? 14 and up. Right after that clip, Worthrop goes, "Oh, it's probably the witching hour because that was written in my dad's notebook." And they sit there and talk about when the witching hour is for like 6 paragraphs where they just keep guessing. And I'm sitting there going, you guys are studiers of the macabre. You should know this. And it just feels belittling to the reader's intelligence. I feel like in a book like this, where everything has been so incredibly mature, that all of a sudden this single puzzle just like feels out of place. And the fact that it takes Robert Morgan to stand there and think about all of the words in clock to figure out that they meant lock. I don't have anything to say except to quote a song. Was it the cops that spent an hour opening a door that was never locked? It might not be all cops, but it's definitely Robert Morgan. There are some incredibly baffling things in here that are never explained. And honestly, the biggest one is the soup. I'm just going to read you about the soup because it has nothing to do with soup, but it's the most baffling thing I've ever looked at with my own 2 eyes. This happens after Pellinor and Jack have like a fight about how they're Jack is saying that like, hey, your dad definitely was like feeding the monsters to keep them alive. And Pelinor's like, how fucking dare you talk about my dad like that, even though that's absolutely what happened. And Pelinor's like super mad. And they're talking about like how to kill it and whatever. And then there's like a break in the chapter. This is what my boy, Will Henry, has to say. I slipped out of the room shortly after this fevered exchange. It was quite painful to watch, and even now, decades later, to remember in such vivid detail. As I mounted the stairs to the second floor, I thought of soup and of the doctor's words. There is no mention of soup in the previous section. Why are we thinking of soup? I mean, I love soup. Like, don't get me wrong. Love soup. Why are we talking about soup? Okay, next we're going to talk about the language used in this book. Rick Yancey needs someone to burn his Thesaurus. I understand that the book is intended to be written as someone who lived in 1888, and I'm sure a lot of people spoke in very different ways back then. Rick Yancey does say that he has edited the notebooks to solve some of their grammar and make more of an understanding. No, he didn't. He didn't. There is a sentence that uses had. Oh, it had that. You know? There's sentences that apostrophizing someone's last name to like claim ownership, that like they have ownership of something, is incorrectly done. It happens with Kearns' name a lot. Where instead of Kearns apostrophe, it's Kearns apostrophe S, so it's Kearns's, which is not grammatically correct. There are a lot of there are a lot of missing commas. So I just think that he's not editing this book at all. I think he's saying that he's editing it for like grammar and spelling and punctuation and stuff, but he's not. And if he was, I would like to hope that he would have chosen better words. The amount of times that I had to read that someone ejaculated something instead of they exclaimed was awful. I didn't like it. They one time used the word intercourse to just, instead of just like the happenings, like they say like the regular intercourse of a Tuesday night instead of the regular happenings of a Tuesday night. You could just have not said that. Like some of the sentences are so incredibly like fuckered beyond belief that it's almost hard to understand what they are trying to say. And it's not that I'm incompetent and can't read. I can read and I know a lot of big words. It's just all the time Future Kennedy, insert the clip of the flummoxed clip. Throw the flummoxed clip in there. Not that, like, not that the word flummoxed is, like, overly complicated, but it's all the time.
I did not feel altogether responsible for the circuitous, I don't know how to fucking say that, nature of our discourse. There were times when the doctor, despite being American-born and England-educated, seemed flummoxed by the precepts of normal conversation. So are you. Sir, who is writing this, you are also flummoxed by normal conversation.
When just different words could have been used, and the meaning wouldn't have changed. It's like he wrote the book and then rewrote it with a thesaurus next to him and checked every single word to see if he could replace them with, like, some kind of archaic word that we don't use to mean that anymore. And my main thing is that when I was younger, which, because this is a young adult book, and I know it says 14 and up, but you're going to tell me that no 12-year-old is going to read this book? Highly unlikely. That the 12-year-old that doesn't know what these words mean would take it to their parents and go, hey, what does this word mean? And have them go, what the fuck? Why is the word intercourse in your book? It gave it, instead of giving it like a historical storytelling vibe, it gave it an up your own ass pretentious kind of vibe. And it made me not want to read it, because I'm like, you are writing this for young teens, and I know exactly what kind of young teen would like this, with these words that their friends wouldn't understand, and I don't like those teens. I was not one of those teens, and I would not hang out with them. This is a book for pretentious dickheads. You know? That's the vibe it gives. And I'm sitting there going, well, was it written by a pretentious dickhead? Unclear. So while we're talking about language, this is a great way to transition into the fucked up various prejudices that this book perpetuates. Okay? We're gonna start with racism. A lot of what is said is by people who do suck, but nobody tells them that they are wrong. Also, this is where we get to complain a little bit about old Will Henry. Insert the slavery analogy.
Like the afflicted slave, laboring in the cotton fields of the old South, I did not worry about where I would go or how I would get there or what I would do once there. Those concerns seemed but trivialities, and the point of freedom, after all, is freedom itself.
It's written by a grown man reflecting on his past. So we first meet Kearns after Malachi puts a gun to Pelinor's head and leaves, like, a red gash from the barrel because he's pushing it in so hard. And Kearns walks in and says, what the blazes did you do to your bloody forehead? And Pellinor goes, an accident. And Kearns' response is, oh, that's good. I thought perhaps you'd become a bloody Hindu. Maybe we don't say that. And then there's all the times where indigenous people are referred to as Indians, and while, you know, at that time, that's what they were called. Rick Yancey's saying that he's editing this. And they definitely shouldn't have been called Indians in 2007 when he published the book. So, and you might be thinking, how does Will Henry remember all this when he's like 157 or whatever? It's because he's got worms. The worms, his dad had worms, and then the worms killed his dad, but they didn't kill him. They didn't kill Will Henry. And they made him not only live forever, but have a fucking wicked sharp memory. So he can remember so much stuff. We all have a worm in our brain. Yes, we all have a worm in our brain. Even the worm in your our brain has a worm in its brain, and that worm has a worm. That's my take. You know, at the end of the day, we all just have a worm in our brain. And then beat the shit out of your friends. So the sequel book, after this one, literally explores indigenous mythology because we are looking at the Wendigo. So I've been struggling with trying to figure out if I want to read the sequel books to this series. So I found the Monstrumologist Wikia, and it's very obviously run by like small children. And there's a page for the Wendigo. Okay, so for starters, the picture of the Wendigo is sick. There's the Wendigo. Okay? That's cool. That's a cool picture of a Wendigo. Alright, that's sick as fuck. So, the text on this page it says, no. And then there are 129 Ys. And then it says, this is very good, Moster, and you should read it. It is very good and fun. Def 50 should read very, very good, read it. So, like, I might not have an option if I want to read it or not. And I'm literally... Look at that. Look at that. I might just have to read it for this child. I don't think I'll read it right away because I want to not think about this for a while. I have never been more frightened to read a book in my life because with the way that other cultures and races are treated in this book, I cannot assume it gets better. In fact, I assume the opposite. I assume it gets worse. So one of the first things that I noticed that made me want to never pick up the book again was in the first 60-page long chapter, where we meet Captain Varner, who is the fat man that I mentioned before who died from being eaten by flies. Twice. 2 times. 2 times. Old Will Henry, the rat bastard that he is, refers to Captain Varner as an invalid. The way that I wanted to immediately give my friend this book back and tell her to never ever make me read it ever was so strong. And I went, Kennedy, yes, it's an ableist slur. Maybe there won't be any more ableism. And I was wrong. Insert the ableism clip. Tone. Really, he waved his mottled claw in the air, searching for the word. Patients, so-called. They are the dregs of society. They come here because there is literally no place else for them to go. No family, or none that would claim them. All are insane, most criminally so. And those who are not have the intellectual capacity of a turnip root. They are human garbage. Discarded by men, toxic to the general populace and to themselves. Forgotten, unwanted, cruel, comical mockeries of all things that make us human. They could rot here or they could be sacrificed to the higher good. With the added benefit that if they vanished, they would not be missed. Starr nodded, appearing relieved that the doctor understood. They would not be missed, he echoed. Dear God, Worthrop, what do you take me for? I may be avaricious, but I'm not completely corrupt. I thought of flies buzzing maddeningly upon a window pane, of their repugnant progeny squirming in the open sores of boots filled with liquefying flesh. I am not completely corrupt. Oh no, agreed Kearns. He crossed the room to stand before the withered, wheezing old man. With great tenderness he said, "To the contrary, you are a humanitarian, Dr. Starr. Let no one tell you otherwise. An anthropological alchemist, turning lead into gold. The chains that bind most men do not bind you. And in this, you and I are brothers, dear Jeremiah. We are the new men of a new and glorious age, free of lies and unbound by any ridiculous rectitude." He placed his hands on either side of Star's weathered pate, cupping his face as he bent low to purr into his oversized ear. "The only truth is the truth of the now. There is nothing either good or bad. Just thinking makes it so. There is no morality, is there, Jeremiah, but the morality of the moment." And with that, John Kearns, student of human anatomy and hunter of monsters, with his bare hands gave his victim's head a violent twist, snapping his neck, severing his spinal cord, killing him instantly. Then, brushing past a stunned and speechless Warthrop on his way out of the room, he said this with no trace of irony: "He will not be missed." So, Dr. Starr is not a good man. And at no point is it ever implied that he is a good man. He's the man that got threatened by Warthrop for not taking care of his patients. But that part that I read to you just now, there's no follow-up to that. That's the end of that section of the chapter. Does the man die? Yes. Does anyone ever tell him that he's wrong? No. In fact, Kearns kind of agrees with him. He kills him and says that no one will miss him, which is true, but nobody tells him he's wrong. And even as a fully grown, century-old man, Will Henry says nothing about it. In fact, it was century-old Will Henry that called Varner an invalid. It wasn't anyone else who was there. It wasn't anyone else who was in the scene. It was old as fuck Will Henry. And this is a book for teens. For teens that they think are stupid because of the fucking clock puzzle, okay? And teens are highly impressionable. You think that telling a group of 14-year-olds that a certain type of person is human garbage isn't going to leave an impression on them, even if that man was bad? And even if we are to say, well, we were told it was bad because, like, Kearns killed him. Yeah, but Kearns is bad too. Kearns is almost worse than Starr in some regards. And Pellinor continues to refer to these types of people, the mentally ill, as human garbage. He says out loud, "Why didn't you send Varner to also be eaten with the rest of the human garbage?" There are a lot of things that I will let slide. And usually they are things that happen within good art. But not only do I not think this book is good art, I will not let this slide. This is unacceptable for teenagers. Not because of the gore, okay? Kids nowadays, they're 9 years old watching FNAF, okay? They get it. They're fucking so in horror, and, like, I love that, okay? But everything else in this book, I can't justify it. Nor do I want to. When I talked about this on TikTok, someone came in and was like, well, I mean, it's, like, the language isn't great, but, like, Also, the horror is pretty bad for like young adults, and people. When I was younger, people are trying to get me to read Stephen King. I wouldn't even read Stephen King, dude. I don't have a single fucking Stephen King book in my house, and it's going to stay that way. Okay? This book did not lead me. So, I've realized that what I like is a book that makes me think, okay? A book that pulls me in with interesting characters and then hits me with the just like this interesting concept to think of. I found nothing interesting to consider in this book. And I feel like the thing with horror is that's what it's supposed to do, right? Ghost stories are usually about trauma of some kind, like a ghost in writing. When you write a story, some characters have ghosts, something that they have to get over, something they have to move past. And you can say that the ghosts in this book are the trauma of Warthrop and Will Henry that are given to them by their fathers. And that's valid. But there's not enough there for me to work with. Hey homies, I remembered that there was something else that I wanted to talk about that I thought was really weird about the book that I literally just completely forgot yesterday because I ended up going on just a crazy rant about who even knows, man. I want to talk about how weirdly religious this book is. And it's not to say that I don't like religious themes in horror. I think that religious themes in horror are so cool. But it feels really out of place in this book, and I'm going to talk about why. So, not only does it happen all the time, like, there's a part where Will Henry is falling through, like, a collapsed tunnel. Like, it collapses out from underneath him and he falls. And he's like, I don't know how long I fell. Probably as long as it took Lucifer to fall from heaven. And like they do it all the time. There's these constant references to God, which like Malachi gets a pass for that because his dad's literally like a reverend. Okay? It makes sense for him to talk about God a lot. I think another good example of times where God has come up for no reason is the clock puzzle. I understand that the solution is when Christ himself is mocked, but they don't know that beforehand and they just start guessing psalms and Bible verses, which is strange. And there are just like lots of references in and about like to Christianity and Catholicism. And no one else is making these references except for old Will Henry. And old Will Henry isn't religious. So that's where I'm confused about this. So there's a part where he talks about how his mom was religious and his dad was not. So he would go to church sometimes to kind of like appease his mom. And then, but like he didn't really believe it. Like he just went to make his mom happy. And then once his family died, he never went to church at all, which he was fine with because he didn't believe in God anyway, so why do we keep talking about it? Also, I think I forgot to mention that we don't know how long Will Henry has been with Warthrop, like in his care. Like, we don't, it doesn't feel like very long, but also Will Henry knows about, like, the cycles that Warthrop goes through when he's in his feelings about not having anything to work on. So he has to have had been there for a while, but we literally have no way. They do not. If they did tell us, I just didn't see it and I didn't care. But thinking about it, I cannot think of a time where they tell us. I did not like this book. I don't think it helped that I read Monstrilio before this. And I really liked Monstrilio. And you're gonna sit there and you're gonna go, Kennedy, What are you talking about? You haven't uploaded a video about Monstrolio? And I'm gonna go, yeah, you're right. I didn't. But it's because what I did record for Monstrolio isn't good enough for the book. It deserves more than what I originally made for it, and I'm going to reread it, and I'm going to do something far more in-depth, something that is worthy of Monstrolio. Yeah, at the end of the day, okay, what I want you to take away from this: 1, Pelennor Warthrop sucks. 2, ACAB. 3, Malachi Stinnett is the only character that has a fulfilling and satisfying arc in the whole story. 4, question mark, slow burn romance between an adult and a child, question mark, question mark, question mark. Do I have a 5? I am too grown to read young adult novels, I think. Or at least not ones that are written like this. Because it wasn't good. Also, like, some books are not made for my age demo, and I love them. I own every single series of Unfortunate Events book, and every time I pick them up to, like, reread them, they're just as good. The quality didn't change. The quality, it just is a good story. So it has to just be that this is fucking poorly written. 6, I really liked reading live, so I think that's gonna be a thing that I do in the future. I don't think I have a 7. Enjoy the discussion questions. Why do you think the author frames the story as if it is a real journal? Fuck if I know, dude. Why do you think the author sets the story in 1888? If I had to say, it's because we're trying to make this believable, and the further back you put it, the less likely there are any, like, reasonable records. So, that's my argument. When Erasmus Gray asks Will Henry what Warthrop is a doctor of, he replies, the grotesque, bizarre, and unspeakable. What does he mean by these descriptions? What is the study of supernatural mysteries and phenomena called today? Cryptozoology. And conspiracy theories. What do you think is the most grotesque physical attribute of the Anthropophagi? Probably all the teeth. I was gonna say brain in the crotch, but it's definitely like the 3,000 teeth. What does Dr. Warthrop mean when he says to Will Henry, we are slaves, all of us? To what are Dr. Warthrop and Henry enslaved? Well, Will Henry's enslaved to Warthrop, and Warthrop is enslaved to the history of his father. Dr. Warthrop is angered at Will Henry's suggestion that he is responsible for Erasmus Gray's death. They formatted this wrong. Because the next point says, do you agree that Dr. Warthrop is responsible? Why or why not? I don't think he's responsible. He was saving Will Henry's life. Why does Will Henry find Dr. Warthrop's suggestion that he be thankful to him for saving his life galling? Because he killed Gray in the process. What are Will Henry's impressions of Dr. Warthrop? Not great. How did Will Henry come to be an assistant to Dr. Warthrop? His parents died. How do the contents of the trunk belonging to Dr. Warthrop's father reveal about the relationship between the doctor and father? It was bad. What does Will Henry learn about Dr. Warthrop's relationship with his father in the letter he finds? How is the relationship between Will Henry and Dr. Warthrop both similar and different from the relationship between the doctor and his father? Warthrop is sad, and his daddy didn't love him. And he kind of doesn't, he loves Will Henry, but he doesn't let him know, which is kind of fucked up. Like, they're gonna sit here, and they're gonna try to make me be like, oh no, but he gave him a hat at the end. Okay. Severus Snape ended up saving Harry Potter's life, but that doesn't excuse the fact that he was a hateful, abusive shithead through, like, 6 of the books. All my homies hate Severus Snape. All my homies should also hate Warthrop. What do Dr. Warthrop and Will Henry learn about the Anthropophagi from Captain Varner? What is Varner's fate? Varner fucking dies. Because he's getting eaten by flies. Will Henry thought of the many times of running away from Dr. Warthrop but never did. What are his reasons for staying? Stockholm Syndrome. What connections does Dr. Warthrop see between his father's work in monstrumology, Charles Darwin's in evolution, and Francis Galton's in eugenics? I'm not answering that question. Why does Dr. Worthrop enlist the help of Dr. John Kearns? Because he's a literal monster hunter. Why do you think Dr. Kearns means when he says he admires the aboriginal purity of the anthropophagi? He means that he likes that they haven't been tamed or tainted by they haven't been tainted or tamed by humans, so what they do is pure and intrinsic to themselves. Why does Dr. Kearns call Dr. Worthrop a sentimental hypocrite? Because Worthrop is a hypocrite. He'll sit there and be a dickhead and then be like, don't be mean to people. Fuck you. Why do you think Dr. Worthrop warns Will Henry to steer clear of Kearns? Kearns literally ended up almost killing him, so that's valid. In what ways does Kearns believe that humans and the anthropophagi are the same? What does he think is the one significant difference? Do you agree? I'm pretty sure he says that the one significant difference is that they like humans have made up morality and what is good and bad. Whereas like their similarities are like we're both just doing what we have to survive. And then basically he's like, but humans feel bad about that. Which, like, shut the fuck up, dude. What does Will remember about his father's final days? They were not good. So, what he means in that part, which I will reiterate, is the best part of the book. That single, like, section where he talks about his family's death and how he, like, escaped the house. So, what he's saying is that while he escaped and he ran from the house fire, from his family, from the shit that was going on, he is not only forced to remember it, but it appears that he's forced to remember it because he has the worms in him, which he got from his dad, which is the reason why his dad ended up setting himself on fire. And he's like bound to the memory, and he's never able to get past it. But he's also bound by the infection that is in him now. And he remains because he has to continually, like, remember this event. Which is how trauma works, so that's cool. What is the significance of Dr. Worthrop's gift of a new hat to Will Henry? Why was Will's old hat important to him? What is the significance of Dr. Worthrop burning the contents of his father's truck? So Will's old hat was important because it was a gift from his dad. Worthrop gifts him a new hat because he's kind of, like, taking on that fatherly role. And also because the old hat was too small for his big ass fucking head, because he's a big boy now. So having a hat that fits his head, in a way symbolizes him, like, growing up. And why is Worthrop burning the contents of his father's truck? I think that there were more mysteries in there that he probably shouldn't have set on fire. But he's basically just like, I'm fucking done with your bullshit, Dad. How does the relationship between Dr. Worthrop and Will Henry change in the course of the story? They learn to not be shitty. He learns to be less shitty. What are the examples of how the author uses sensory imagery in the story? Not good. I didn't like them. We use the word flotsam too many times. I don't like the depiction of the pus. That was bad and made me feel like it was an infection fetish. Post-reading activities. In the story, Worthrop mentions Proteus, Aguinius, and Dr. Kearns mentions Awawakis, Arawakis, Spiromentra Masoni, Wicheria Brancroft. Use online resources or reference books to find out which of these creatures are real. The Proteus Anguinus is like a salamander. We know that Araquis isn't real. Invent a real life monster that Dr. Worthrop and Will Henry can investigate in a new Monstrumologist story. No. This guide was written by Edward T. Sullivan, a librarian and writer. Bad. We finally did it. The book is over! Let's go! I don't think I mentioned anywhere that right before the end of the last chapter, before the epilogue, they just decide to reveal to us that that Jack Kearns is Jack the Ripper. and apparently that becomes important later, but like it's really kind of fucking stupid. With a gleam in his charcoal eyes, Kearns introduced himself as Dr. John J. Schmidt of Whitechapel. Next to the table was the front section of the Times of London. The headline under the the headline under the masthead blared, "Ripper strikes again / Whitechapel killer claims fourth victim." Whitechapel. I'd heard that name in the parlor of the house on Motley Hill 6 months before. Dr. John J. Schmidt of Whitechapel. The doctor said nothing as I read the gruesome article, remained silent for a few seconds when I looked up at him. And it was I who at last broke that awful silence. "Do you think," I asked. There was no need to finish the question. "What do I think?" he said rhetorically. "I think Malachi should have taken him up on his offer." Okay, thanks for watching. I hated this book, but I hope you got enjoyment out of watching me suffer while explaining why. I have no idea what I'm going to read next, and I'm probably going to end up reading it live also, so if you want to follow me on Twitch, you can do that. I also like to record some content for TikTok. I am Kendallbee on Twitch and Kendallbean on TikTok because I had already made Kendallbee and then forgotten the password and deleted the whole app, and then when I got it again later I couldn't retake my name back because I couldn't remember what I did to sign up in the first place, because when I signed up the first time it was when TikTok was cringe, so I just did it for the jokes, you know. Yeah, thanks for hanging out. If you liked this book, let me know and tell me why, because I want to be clear that like I understand that not every book is for everyone, and I just don't think this book was for me. But if you can tell me why you loved this book, I would love to hear that, because I love that you love this book. And this isn't me telling you that you're stupid. This is me telling you that you're we're just different. That's okay. All right, have a good day. Bye. "I had hoped to avoid it," was his cryptic response. "The smell of blood should have drawn her out. I'm at a loss, frankly, why she didn't come." Most men. I'm at a loss, frankly, why she didn't come. Quote, most men. Quote, most men.